So our lesson today is we're going to discuss a little bit about spiritualism, and we're going to draw from S.J. Loveland's Mediumship, a course of 7 lectures. And he tells us, I draw this from the first chapter, and he tells us that the first view of the universe impresses us in the most external sense, with the idea of substance, something real and tangible. The common term for expressing this idea is matter, by which means that offers my notes, I don't write properly, so I get myself all screwed up. But the common term for expressing this is matter. That which offers a felt resistance and affects or impresses our outer senses. So we call this matter. We all know that. However, when we first see something, think about those times, or think about a time when you stepped into a museum or a church or a campground or whatever, and you look around and it just overwhelms you. The sensation of that, it just overwhelms you. It's like, wow! And the one person that really gets it is the little one back here. Because everything for her, wow! It's her, right? That would be deeply embarrassing. But it's all, wow!
She agrees.
Mm-hmm. Now, I want you to think about the first time you saw a soul or a ghost. Whether you saw it out of the corner of your eye, whether you think you saw it, whether you actually saw it in front of you, or if you saw it in your mind, think about that time. You got it? All right, so who wants to go first?
For what? To describe
I guess
the
Beth
experience?
wants to go first.
You mean to describe the experience?
So, yes! How did that feel?
It startled me.
Uh-huh.
It startled me. We were in one of our classes here. I think we were looking at the Black Mirror.
Mhm. Okay.
Yes. But we were like meditating on it. And whoosh, a little Asian man came right up in my face and smiled at me and then went away. And you told me later that was one of my guides. Was just real proud of the work I've been doing. But I was startled because I actually jumped back.
Mm-hmm. What did it feel like?
How do you describe the feeling of being startled?
No, not being startled. The little Chinese man that you saw.
What
You did
about
say Chinese, right?
Asian?
Asian. Okay, I'm
We better
sorry.
stick with Asia because I don't know.
But what about the little Asian man? What did he feel like?
Well, I guess you kind of felt like a friend.
Okay. Good. Good. Anybody else want to share something? Sandy?
Well, I haven't really had an encounter, something like Beth has had, but I usually have had dreams where I talk to people or see people,
Okay.
family generally. So, and it's always left me very, very happy, very delighted to have that connection. And very confirming of the the fact that they're never really gone. They're all here. They're just in a different vibration. So, yeah, always leaves me very happy.
So
My brother, my mother, pardon?
in the dream, can you
Mhm.
touch?
I did. On one where my grandmother came to me. My grandmother came to me and we hugged, and it felt like I was being electrocuted. That's the only way I could describe it. Is it was like I was being electrocuted, and she wanted to break away and I wouldn't let her, and I held her tighter, and then she broke it because I think I could have held her all day, you know. But it was really nice. It was really nice. Yeah. Hmm.
So the thing about matter is when you grab a hold of it, it resists. Because of its resistance, you feel it, right? So this implies that if we can feel the souls around us, they must have substance, right? Does that make sense? Yeah.
She says yes, so it must be right.
The theory suggests the soul, when touched, would feel similar to the electromagnetic field around all things, living and otherwise, because we can feel it. And if we can feel it, then there must be a physical connection between the two places. Substance equals tangibility, according to the explorers of spiritualism. So if you can touch them, if you can touch those souls that you see, whether they're in a dream or you see them with your eyes open or they pop up in your mind, if you can touch them, there is substance. And then he tells us that beneath the exterior of matter, or within or around it, is a force or energy which manifests none of the properties of the substance called matter. He's talking about the electromagnetic field or the biofield or the aura. I shouldn't say everything has an electromagnetic field around it. The chairs you are sitting in, the ones in front of you, they have an electromagnetic field. And if you haven't felt that field, just rub your hands together for a moment and then bring them apart and slowly bring them together. And you'll feel a slight resistance. And with that slight resistance, that is the EM field. Now, a solid object also emits an electromagnetic field. You can actually reach out in front of you and you can feel that field. Let me see, where is it at? It's usually very close. It's usually very close. In fact, you get so close that you're almost touching the object. My hand's not sensitive enough today. But you can feel it. Now, you can do this now, or you can do this later. If you do it later, try a plant or something. And bring your hand close to that plant, and you'll be able to feel a slight resistance there. And that slight resistance there is the EM field. And there is a difference between the EM field of a living entity and a non-living entity. A living entity is dynamic. It fluctuates. It moves. And I'm not just making this up either. This is scientifically proven. So I'm not just making it up. When I read this in the article, I took my cup and I held it up and I checked it out. You get very close to the object, but it's there. So everything that has substance to it emits this field. Now here's a question. Something for you to think about. I may ask one or two of you. Does a body no longer occupied still maintain this field? Or is the collapse of this field what allows decomposition to occur?
I think it's consciousness.
Consciousness? We're going to get into consciousness in the next point. Well, you're right on target there. You're right on target. But everything emits an electromagnetic field. A body on artificial, what's it called? I hate it when that happens. Words just whoosh. A body that's brain dead. I'll go with that. Life support, that's it. It's an artificial life support. Still has that electromagnetic field. But that electromagnetic field is more like one that is that of a static or of an object. It doesn't fluctuate. So the question is, does that field of a living entity, because it fluctuates, is that what keeps all of this from falling apart? Any thoughts? How about the gentleman back here? Any thoughts? No? Okay. How about your friend? Any thoughts? Because you're close. You're close. So let's just go on and let you think about it. I'm going to assume that it does. That this field, this dynamic field is what keeps everything alive from falling apart. Now it has its natural process of decay, because once you hit maturity, it's all decay from that point. Our cells, as they renew, they grow, they mature, and then they begin to decay until they're replaced again. It's part of the natural process of life. The natural principle of life has that. But there's something out there that keeps it all together. And perhaps when the soul leaves the body, and that link is broken, or a cord, they like to use a cord. They like to use the term of a silver cord. That cord is broken, then that field begins to disintegrate, because that field is no longer dynamic. There's a component missing. It's like when I changed the volume down on the meditation video, and all of a sudden it started breaking up. Boy, that's annoying. All I want to do is reach over there and smack it. But it's because I disrupted part of the process. And when the soul exits, the process is disrupted. And since that process cannot recover, it becomes static. It stops moving around. So all these cells that are in our body have their own, all these cells have their own little field that begins to break down. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Any comments? Sandy?
Well, I have a couple of different experiences that kind of don't quite seem to mesh with each other, but um, I think I've mentioned before about my first grandchild died 5 minutes before she was born, and they brought her out to me and put her in my arms, and I could feel her presence. Oh my God, so strongly behind me and above me. She just was hovering there for a long time. And when I gave her back, they took her to the nursery, and I didn't know they did this at the time, but they took pictures of her. They dressed her and they took pictures of her, and she looked like my son-in-law. She really looked a lot like him. And then that night, they brought her into my daughter because she was still out, and she looked completely different. Her whole countenance was completely different. So I knew that she had moved away because her face was just like a little precious baby face, but there was no recognition of her spirit there anymore, that she had backed away from it. So that was that was something I've never experienced and was really quite interesting. And the other one was that my sister-in-law was dying from cancer, and she was terribly ill, and she was racked with pain, and her whole countenance showed that pain and swelling in her face, and she just really didn't look a lot like herself. And when she died, all of that was gone. It was gone. Sharon will tell you because she was there. She looked just like her most beautiful self, and just glowingly beautiful. All of that was gone, and her essence, I felt, showed on her face. So they were two different expressions of that, but I guess the similarity is that the difference between the spirit inhabiting and the spirit not inhabiting, and you can see the difference. So I think with that personal spiritual bond inhabits the body, you see that, and when they leave, you just see something different. You see the absence of them, I guess is what I would say. That's anyway, that's been a couple of my experiences.
Good way to put it. I use the term soul because I see a difference between the soul and the spirit. Because the spirit is what animates. In a manner of speaking, you could say the spirit is this EM field. Because without that EM field, it changes. And spirit permeates everything. So our last point here. So we've talked about matter. We've talked about force. This is the force, that EM field, that field I worked through with Beth when she was in the healing chair, that EM field, that is the force. And yeah, my right hand is all messed up here, but I could still feel that biofield, that part of her that emanates. I could still feel that. And so he tells us that in addition to matter and force is something which perceives them. Perceive is more than just to see. And we call it mind or intelligence. And like force, it may be difficult to understand, yet it has no other recognizable properties that are similar to the other two. matter does not possess the same properties as that force that is around it, because that force emanates outward. And that force that emanates outward is not like matter. And mind is not like either one of them. As she put it, it's consciousness. So consciousness or mind is separate. It's something different. And where does mind exist? It doesn't exist here. It exists out here. It's around us. Science calls it and oh man, it's right there, and then whoosh. Well, let me see if I can come up with another word for it. It's a like a quantum field. It exists in the quantum realm, in that realm that everything else emanates from. Science tells us that everything exists in the quantum realm first. Non-local, that's what I was looking for. The mind is non-local because it is not dependent upon the brain. The brain is what? It's matter. And because it's matter, it has what?
Existence.
Also known as, yes, it has a field. And the mind operates through this field and through the brain and tells my hand to move. Mind does that. Of course, we call it autonomic system, but mind does that. Mind is what helps us figure out that we need to turn the handle on the door to get through the door. So the question becomes, we have matter, we have the field, and we have mind. Are they dependent on each other? Maybe?
I would say no.
No? All right, let's get a third opinion here. Anybody want to say yes? Okay. We have matter, we have that field, that force, and we have mind or consciousness. Are they dependent upon each other?
No, I guess not. I think no. Now that I think of it.
Oh, you changed your mind.
Mhm.
That's okay. She said no first. She shook her head. And she's right. They are not dependent upon each other. The only time they are dependent upon each other is when they come together. And what happens when they come together? What do they form when they come together?
Yeah.
Life. Get an A for the day. Life as we know it. Life as we know it when we are here. Now, when we take all of this together, when the soul vacates the body, the soul still has substance. Because the only thing that is shed is the grossest part of the body. And by the grossest part, I mean the most material aspect of the body. So when the soul vacates, this is left. Most of this is left. But it takes part of this with it. It takes part of that force with it. Because various soul teachings, and probably the Paul Selig books too, tell us that we progress from one realm to the next. And as we progress from one realm to the next, the grossest or heaviest part of what we are at that particular time is left behind. And we become what you would say lighter and lighter, or we move higher and higher, however you want to put it, each time we progress. And they also tell us that when we move from one realm to the next, we don't really realize it. So when death visits this body, I'm probably going to wake up dead and not know it and keep on going because I've just entered another sphere of existence. Who cares what's going on behind me? We're always taught to do what with the past? Leave it in the past. Leave the past in the past. So we just move forward. And the thing that helps us move forward is what? Non-local.
Mind.
Mind. And what does mind do? Creates ideas. It creates thoughts. But before it can create thoughts and everything, it needs what? What feeds the mind?
Man. Knowledge.
Knowledge.
We like the pantomime.
Knowledge. And when you take that knowledge that you've gathered, and you begin to apply it, that's where your progression through these different spheres occurs. That's how it happens. It's got nothing to do with being smarter than the guy next door. It's about understanding life as it unfolds. Any thoughts or comments?
Does the knowledge you gain help you like make your reality? Is that what makes you progress as you change your own reality? It changes your life.
Exactly. You create your own reality. In fact, it was just recent that it was brought to my attention that now one of the Gnostic teachings is that they say all of this was built on a reflection, that this is a false reality, an imperfect reality, and it was built upon a reflection. And, you know, I ran with it until something said, hey, Philip, what if you're the illusion? So I had to think about it. What if I am the illusion? What would that mean? Well, where does my self-image exist? Where does my self-worth exist? And where is my self-image influenced? So what influences all of this?
Our experiences.
No, she had it. She had it. Say it out loud. No. What influences this?
everything else. He influences you. You influence me. I influence her. She influences Sharon. We influence each other. So all of this, if you say something bad to me, it influences how I feel. So that means that because you said something bad to me and I feel bad about it, then my reality, my internal reality, is the reflection. Yes?
Can you have so much control over your own reality where it doesn't influence you? Or as strongly as it would influence the next person?
Well, we influence each other because we have these fields. Remember, I talked about this field. And this field is not just here where you can feel it. It expands. Right now, he's in your field and you're in his field. So what you're feeling, he can pick up on very easily. And what he's feeling, you can pick up on very easily. Now, we create our reality based on our understanding. And as our understanding of ourselves improves, okay, then our sphere of influence improves as well. Not only does it expand, but it has a different effect on people. So you're never really out of touch unless you're walking around like this. And you're still not entirely out of touch. You've just narrowed your focus. However, if your thinking, your understanding becomes rigid, okay, then you've lost touch with everything. Your reality will not change. People who talk about, oh, I wish things wouldn't change, back in the good old days and all of this other stuff, they try to keep their thinking themselves, they try to keep it rigid. And what happens in a strong wind with a rigid weed? Exactly, it breaks. So change is inevitable. Progress is inevitable. If we're more flexible, we gain more experience, which is key. Because as we gain more experience, we're taking in more knowledge, we're processing it, and we're using it. Does all of that make sense for you? Does that answer your question? Good. So, does anyone else have any questions they might like to ask? All right, then. What are your thoughts, Sharon?
It's really interesting.
Good. So while we're waiting for her to log on, how about this gentleman back here? What are your thoughts?
I'll just listen.
Does it make sense? Does any of it make sense?
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Is it usable?
Yeah, to an extent. Yeah.
Okay. As long as it's usable. The idea is to take what you understand, because we don't get it all the first time around. Believe me, I've tried. It doesn't happen. We get bits and pieces, and eventually these bits and pieces start to come together, and they make sense. I read all kinds of books on this stuff for 15 years, and it didn't make sense until I got into about 35, almost 40. Then it all started to make sense. So as long as a little bit of it's useful, that's fantastic. So, how about you, Beth?
I enjoyed this discussion. This always opens up the realm of potentialities, you like to say. So thank you for it.
Then I want to thank all of you for your thoughts, for sharing, and for allowing me to share this with you.